In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow. Hello and welcome back to the Sunset Series. My name is Joanna Hollick and I'm the coordinator of the Sunset Series with Eastham 400. I'm here today with Kesten Zahn, the museum director at the Harwich Historical Society. She grew up here on Cape Cod and is now back working with the Historical Society. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So one of the ways that we study Native American history is through archaeology, and I understand that you have done some work with archaeology. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, as you said, I did grow up here on the Cape, but most of my archaeological work actually happened in Florida in the southeastern United States. And what I'm going to be talking about today came from some archaeological work that I was doing in Florida, which was examining the material culture of what we have left behind from not only the original indigenous population in Florida, but also the Spanish settlers and their missions. So what we have are these very distinct material cultures that we find in South Florida that show these European imports alongside a lot of traditional indigenous pieces.
And how has the archaeology that you've studied or the work that you've done in Florida compared to some of our history and the stories here on Cape Cod?
So what I initially looked at when I was in Florida was kind of the geographical context that they were in. So I actually started looking at the Caribbean and Central and South America and compared the conquistadors and these European explorers coming in and their interactions in Central America and other parts of the world where they were colonizing in the 1500s. Now that we have this anniversary this year, I thought I would take a look at the difference that we see between the interaction of these early settlers here on the Cape versus what we see in Florida.
And were there any particular differences that you found that you'd like to elaborate on?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we see that really characterizes the relationship of the Spanish in Florida with their indigenous counterparts is that it was an extremely hostile relationship. You see a period of about 300 years, so between the 1500s and the 1800s, where these explorers are coming into Florida and not being able to establish any sort of real colony there. Their interactions were extremely hostile. What we see too is that the indigenous Floridians found out a lot about the Spanish explorers from their trade with the Caribbean indigenous population. And they warned them, these people are coming in, they are exploiting your land and kind of murdering your citizens, so watch out for them when they come over here. So the Spanish are coming into Florida, and they are immediately met with not only a hostile population, but also a hostile environment. They don't really have a way to subsist in this area. They aren't really interested in agriculture. They're not particularly keen in cooperating with the indigenous population. Most of the stories that we have from this time talk about the Spanish arriving in Florida and then immediately trying to get anywhere else that they possibly could. So they'd go to Florida and then make their way back to Mexico, where they had already established a colony there. Mostly why they were in Florida was not really to take anything from it and send it back to Europe. When the Spanish got to Florida, there weren't the type of resources that they found in other parts of the world that they were colonizing. There wasn't gold and silver that they could import or export back to Europe. There really wasn't anything there worthwhile to them. Even the people themselves they saw as kind of primitive savages of very little value, not only for Europe, but also to help them make a settlement. So right off the bat, they were not really open to any sort of relationship or any positive relationship with them. there really wasn't any sort of need to establish a colony there. It wasn't anything that would aggrandize them in the eyes of Europe. And the Spanish settlers were desperately clinging onto this European identity. They didn't want to really adapt to this Floridian landscape and rely on any sort of indigenous influence to help them survive there. Whereas up here, you've got these pilgrims coming over from England. They're already an oppressed people. They understand what that's like. So when they came over to this new world, for them it was a new and better life. So they were very open to having positive interactions because they knew they needed it. They needed the help of the people already living here. So you have, when the pilgrims get here, they meet with natives who are already versed in English. They have relationships, whether through fishermen or, in the case of Squanto, being in London and having this first-hand knowledge of English. So the people they encounter to them are not primitive at all. They already have this understanding of English. And to them, they're like, oh, these are sophisticated people. Let's be more open to them. But also we need to rely on them in order to survive. They needed their help to establish a colony there. They were much more willing to cooperate rather than subjugate, at least initially when they first arrived.
And you've spoken about both Florida and Cape Cod and some of the relations between Native people and the English. And are there anything in particular, any connections that Harwich has, or anything that Harwich Historical Society is doing to honor the 400th or related to this history?
So we do have a very small exhibit that was planned for this year. Unfortunately, the Brooks Academy Museum is going to be closed just for this remainder of the year, but next year you will be able to see it. We do have that Harwich, England connection as well with the Mayflower. So our exhibit talks about the settlement of this area and those who kind of came back to this area from Plymouth Colony.
And if we want to learn more about the Harwich Historical Society, how can we do that, and where can we find you?
So you can visit us at our website, which is just www.harwichhistoricalsociety.org. We're also on Facebook at Harwich Historical Society as well. You can find out information about our ongoing exhibits in the Elmer Kroll Barn, which is set to open on July 20th, and will be open Mondays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays this season. As well, we will be posting information about events such as historical walks around town, and information about any other events we're having, such as a full lecture of what I spoke about today for Massachusetts Archeology Month in October.
Well, thank you so much, Marie, for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching today's episode of the Sunset Series. If you're interested in participating more actively in learning about local history, there are several sites and landmarks here in Eastham that you can visit. One such landmark is Indian Rock. Indian Rock is a 20-ton glacial boulder that was used by Native Americans for tool sharpening. The stone was likely used for sharpening bone items such as harpoon heads, fish hooks, and stone axes. Today, you can still see the markings these tools made in the stone. Also known as Sharpening Rock, this boulder was moved to the top of Skiff Hill near Hemingway Landing in 1965 due to shoreline retreat. You can still find the rock there today. From the parking lot at the end of Hemingway Road, it is a 1/10 of a mile walk uphill to the rock. And we encourage you to visit this historic landmark. Thank you.